listening to Urbanistica podcast. I'm looking forward. This episode is going to be really interesting to talk about the mindset and digitalization in municipalities. I have the pleasure to welcome Tony Mc Carrick to Urbanistica podcast. Hey, Tony.
Hi, Mustafa. Good morning. It's great to talk to you. Looking forward to the chat.
Yes, me too. Thank you so much for giving your time, inspiration, and knowledge. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's just survived Easter now. We're living in very special times, and it's really a time that it's good to reflect what's happening, how do we look ahead, what will the new normal be. So it's challenging times, but also great possibilities ahead, I think.
Yes, exactly. Big challenge, but I think we are ready to raise up and face the challenge together.
Yes, yes.
Well, Tony, I would love to hear more about you. How would you like to introduce yourself and what are you passionate about?
Okay, well, my name is Tony Mc Carrick, as you said, Mustafa, and I'm from Ireland originally and a teacher. And I've also been a vice principal at a school. But I've been working with digitalization in municipalities for maybe the last 10 or 12 or 15 years, more or less. And what I'm passionate about is to try and make a difference. Try and make a difference in what I say, but also what I do. And that's why I always, when somebody asks me, Tony, what do you think? Or Tony, can I interview you? I always say yes, because I take it as a great compliment. I think it's important that we people take the chance and say what we think. And then if people agree with me or not, that's a different ballgame altogether.
Yeah. And what made you move from school atmosphere to the digital world?
Well, when I worked with adult education in the 90s, then internet turned up, and I was really in impressed by the possibilities of transparency, to see the possibility of global cooperation. And that's how it really started. I see the world as a global world, that we're all in it together. We can make it better together. And internet gives us great possibilities to do that. I think we have to be better to utilize the possibilities and look forward and see the possibilities. Of course, we have to critically think about the things we do, of course, but there are great possibilities. So let's take the chance and try and make things a bit better.
Yeah, and you worked in two different municipalities in Sweden, right?
Yes, before, well, I worked in a few different municipalities, but at the kind of job I have now, before I worked in Botkyrka municipality, and I was working in education as a strategist. And now, since 2 years back, I work in the municipality of Södertälje, which is just south of Stockholm. And there we try to take a holistic approach to digitalization. And that means that we try to work with synergies and convergence, that one plus one should be much more than two, because that's the essential part of building digital ecosystems.
Mm.
And digital ecosystems, I think, and we think, that's what can give the citizens a better service. And that's what it's all about, more or less.
Yeah. So to build this ecosystem, we need the data. If
Yeah.
we start from the basics, so what do you mean
Yes.
by data? How do you collect them, and where do you store them?
Yeah, well, data is an enormous big question. There's lots of different types of data. One talks about open data, one talks about big data, talk about data lakes. Data, in a very simple way of putting it, is small bits of information where you can, in a digital world, get all the information together, and then you can do analysis and do something with it. I can take a very simple example that we use in Södertälje. We put out a sensor in one of our lakes, which measures the temperature. It measures the temperature every 30 minutes. And that information goes to our Internet of Things platform, or LoRaWAN platform. That information is then connected to our open data platform, where we visualize the rate of change of the temperature in the lake. And then just last week, we've connected that to our AI chatbot, so that the citizen can ask, what is the temperature in Mailer Bodit? And that's one way of using data to connect it and to get synergies and to give information. This is a very simple example, but the next example we're going to do, and we've already started on it, is putting sensors on the parking lots that are for people who are physically impaired, so that they will be able to ask our chatbot, is this parking lot free now or not? And that's one way of using data and connecting different types of data to give information which is important to the citizen. That's a few examples of it.
Yes, and this is the mindset we were talking about actually before the episode, that connecting everything together to get the biggest
Yes.
effect.
Yes, yeah. And when I started working Södertälje with this, one of the first things, the first jobs I got was to try and help the municipality form a strategy for digitalization. And what we did was we tried to find out, well, where are we ourselves? We tried to understand what's happening in the world, what's happening in, of course, in our neighboring countries, Norway and Sweden and Finland, what's happening in Europe, what's happening in the United States, but also what's happening in Singapore, what's happening in Vietnam, which countries are really making a difference. And what we could see was that those countries who took a holistic approach, that they tried to get everything to act together, they are really the countries that are moving forward and breaking new ground. And that's what we are trying to do in Södertälje in our small context. And I think that's the most important thing we're trying to do. And of course, we don't succeed in everything we do, but the approach and the way that you look at development is very important. That things are not in silos, it's the exact opposite. You have to get things to work together. You have to build ecosystems. And to get ecosystems to work together, you have to think in a particular way, you have to work in a particular way. Because it's the outcome, it's the leverage, that's what really gives the kickback in the organization and municipality.
But you're mentioning that now you're on your way to work holistically. So
Yes.
What is the standard in Sweden, or almost the standard?
Good question. Well, according to the OECD report, which I usually quote quite often, really, and it came just less than a year ago, May 2019. What it says more or less that Sweden has a wonderful IT infrastructure, one of the best in the world, really, but that things in the public sector in relation to digitalization is going quite slow. That we're not getting really the kickback we should get. And what they say is more or less like this: they say, maybe the way you worked before will not work now. And I think we really have to understand that. And that's not only true of Sweden, of course, that's true for every country and for every person. And that's one of the things, one of our guidelines in the work. Another thing they say that is a big challenge in Sweden is that we work very much in silos. And that means that we put things in small boxes. We have 290 municipalities in Sweden. Many of these municipalities, they work on their own or they compete with each other. What we really have to do is, according to the OECD, and I fully agree, is we have to find structures to help development. Because the better the next municipality goes for them, the better it will go for Södertälje. So we have to work in a different way. We have to ask the question, what is the new way of doing things? And the new ways of doing things is not competing with each other in the country or between different countries. The way forward is to look at the whole approach. And that's what we're trying to do in Södertälje.
Yeah. But two municipalities working together, how does it work? If you explain, like, is it about data is exchanging or linking together their infrastructure?
Well, my opinion is that a lot of municipalities in Sweden, they choose one area or maybe two areas, and they can get really good at it. And a lot of municipalities are much better than Södertälje in almost all areas. But the thing is, the real kickback that you get in digitalization is when you have all these processes working together. So in Södertälje, we work with the open data, we work with artificial intelligence, we work with robotic process automation, we work with digital post, we work with Internet of Things, etc., etc., etc. We're building a digital ecosystem.
Mm.
And it's the ecosystem that really gives the big kickback. Because when we work with robotic process automation, we can also get synergies between that and e-services. So it's the approach. And if we look at our neighboring countries, Denmark or Norway, they have a much more holistic national approach to digitalization than we have here in Sweden. As an example, in Denmark, they started the Digitalisering Styrelsen, as it's called, 2004. In Sweden, we started our DIG, the National Agency for Digitalization, I think just 2 years ago. So you can see the difference in approach, the difference in the strategic approaches one has taken. So I think, and that's what OECD says as well, that we have to really find new ways of doing things. We have to be much more organized. We have to give the municipalities the possibility to develop. And working in small municipalities on their own, that is not really the way forward, because the world we're living is much more complex today, and we have to find ways of helping each other.
Yes, I was thinking like are the municipalities willing to take this step? If you, because you have a lot of relationship between other municipalities,
Yes.
what do you see like in general?
My experience is that we talk to a lot of municipalities. We have meetings with municipalities maybe 2 or 3 times a week with different ones. And my feeling is that municipalities understand that the time for change has come. They understand that we have to work in a new way, but they don't really know how to do it. And I think that's the big challenge ahead. It's one thing to say, okay, it's the new days, new time, we have to work in a different way. Telling people work in a different way to people or organizations, that doesn't really help. You have to actually show organizations how you can do it, but also you have to give organizations the possibility to do it. So I think in Sweden, I think we have a big challenge that we don't have enough input from the country, from the state, to give better possibilities to scale up and get the qualities.
Mm.
Yes.
Do we have so many policies that making everything impossible and challenging for the municipalities to take this step?
Some people say that. I don't think that's the big challenge. I think the big challenge is that we in Sweden, we look too much inwards instead of outwards. We talk to each other in other municipalities, which is great, but that's not good enough. We have to actually look at the private sector. When we work with robotic process automation, of course, we look how other municipalities do it, but above all, we look how the private sector does it. And why do we do that? Because they are much better at it, and they've been at it for years. So we have to be much better at looking out instead of in, but we also, not only in the country, but we also have to look critically and ask, what are our neighboring countries doing? Or what are our neighboring continents doing? Why are they doing it like that in Singapore? And what can we learn? So I think in Sweden, but also in Europe, I think we have a tendency today that to look backwards instead of forward, to look inwards instead of outwards, and that is our biggest challenge. I think we have to be much more critical and ask ourselves: are the way we are doing things, are they good enough now, or maybe we have to change? I think we have to ask that question as for every person, particularly people in my position, but also as organizations. And in these days of when Corona is changing the landscape of how we work and how we travel, we have a chance to reflect. How could we do things in a different way? And many people are asking today, Why haven't we taken the possibilities of digitalization better before the corona thing happened? A lot of people are asking us that question. I think we have to be more critical in the way we lead, and we talk to each other. The critical part, I think, is an important way forward. That's my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. And talking about Corona as a big reflection moment.
Yes,
So you already started the big work now in Södertälje, and then
yes.
Corona is here now. So what do
Mm,
you think will be the new normal? Is it the same way you were doing things,
yeah.
or you gonna
Mm.
change it?
Yeah, I think what is the new normal, Mustafa, is maybe one of the biggest questions that we really need to stop and think about. At the weekend, I was listening to the Prime Minister of Sweden who was interviewed about the corona, and the guy who asked, who's interviewed him said, you know, when will we get back to normal? I'm not going to reflect on the answer, but what I'm saying really is that is the wrong question. If we think that we're waiting for everything is going to go back to normal again, then I think we have not learned anything from this. We have to really ask ourselves, what is the new normal? What is the new way of collaborating? What is the new way of learning? What is the new way of teaching? What is the new way of doing your podcast? What is the new way of communicating with our citizens? And as we all know today, a lot of people are just like me. They're sitting at home and they're working. We could have done this, of course, 2 months ago. Why do we spend so much money in the public sector in public offices when a lot of people would probably prefer and probably do better by working from home? So we have to really try and take this chance to reflect what is the way forward? That's what I think anyway. Mustafa.
Yeah, yeah. I really like the mindset you're thinking about. It's always looking forward and thinking, not so much looking backward, but take learning from the
No.
past to take the
Yes.
next step. And
Yes.
we were talking a lot about working remotely from home
Yes.
in the previous episode, and many people now actually thinking that maybe I don't need to work 5 days in office, maybe
No.
two home, three at
Yes.
office, and so on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's going to be a big change.
I hope it's going to be a big change, and I think those organizations who really take the chance here, they can really make a difference. Because one of the big challenges we have ahead, of course, is how do we, in a municipality context, how do we become an attractive place to work? And those organizations who have a feeling for the future and have a focus on how do we deliver something good for the society, because that's why we're at work. And then where people sit or they don't sit, that's not the important thing. So we have to really, I think, be much more critical. Why do we do things? We know that the whole thing of a 40 hours working day, that's only from the 70s, which is, in a historical perspective, yesterday. Why is 40 timbers better than 36 or
Mm,
35?
mm.
And the whole concept of work. Other countries in the world, they take this type of question much more seriously. And I think those countries that really reflect what is the way forward? What does work look like? What does teaching look like? What does learning look like? And above all, maybe, what does leadership look like in the new world? I think it's probably the biggest question of all. What type of leadership do we need to improve society so that we make things better for everybody? I think that's the most important question.
Yeah, and also I believe in that it's a big this big question needed to get an answer. But the thing is that time costs money, and no one will, not no one. Maybe I am too too much now, but maybe the majority not want to put the money on to reflect because they don't see the winning in the long run.
Yeah, and I fully agree. A lot of people reflect in that way. But what I'm saying is that those organizations, it doesn't matter really if they're private or public sector, that don't stop, that don't reflect, they're going to have a problem on the way forward, especially in the public sector. One of the big challenges we have ahead is that how will we recruit people at all? And the whole concept of being an attractive place to work, I think that's a really big question that we have to think about. And of course, wages is an important thing, but it's not the most important thing. I think for a lot of people is the feeling: do I do something that makes a difference? That makes a big difference. Does my employer take the chance to use the qualities that I have to make something better? Am I listened to? Am I part of the development? I think these type of questions, those organizations that think in that way, I think they will be fine. Those that don't do it, I think they're going to be in big troubles ahead. And also countries who look backwards instead of forward. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I was listening to a podcast about leadership and H&R. So they were talking about how you get talents to your working space and
Yes.
how do you keep them?
Yes.
Because the new generation, let's say my generation, is now looking
Uh,
forward to the approach. It's not really about
yes.
how many hours, and
No.
no, it's really about the approach. And I just feel the same because like a few months ago I just had a talk with my boss that now I'm working with urban planning, and I just told her the same, that the time that I don't feel that I'm doing I'm reaching my approach and changing the world, then I need to change a job because this is not really
Mm,
what I want. What
mm,
I want is
mm.
that my reason to wake up, to be on this planet,
Yes.
you know?
Yes. Yeah.
So I fully agree with you.
Mm, mm, mm.
But tell me more about like the different areas in Södertälje that you're focusing on. You mentioned the thing of internet, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
the
Yes.
robotic.
Yes, yes. I can start with. It's not that one is more important than the other, but I have to start somewhere. My our main message anyway is that we are trying. Note the word trying. It doesn't mean that we're doing it right, but we're trying to work holistically. We're trying to build digital ecosystems that talk to each other, so that one process enhances the other process. So one of the things we're doing is we launched a chatbot which is built on natural language processing. So it's a part of AI, artificial intelligence, for about 1 year ago, and it's a concept that we found actually in Norway. And in Norway, the concept, they have 80 municipalities who work together. And this concept builds on really that the questions people ask to a municipality are more, majority of questions are the same. It doesn't really matter if it's in Södertälje or in Huddinge or in Piteå. And then some of the questions are specific to the municipality. So by building a concept where lots of municipalities can use the same databases, then you will get a chatbot that can deliver much better value, much quicker, and much cheaper. So we've had our chatbot now up and running for a year. It's called Kim. In Swedish, it's called Kommunen informerar medborgare. In English, the municipality informs the citizens. And one of the reasons we launched this was that we wanted to increase our accessibility to our citizens. And we can see that from the data, from the statistics, we can see that people are asking our chatbot Kim questions around the clock. People are asking Kim 0500, and they're talking to us at 11 o'clock at night. So people are asking Kim questions around the clock, and that also means that people can ask Kim questions if they're in Sweden or in another part of the world. So what we're doing is we're increasing accessibility, which is really, really important. We know that the citizens of Södertälje, like the rest of the citizens in Sweden, live in a global world where the digital world is the best of the best of the best. And of course, they demand more and more from municipality, as they should. And we have to meet up and try. So that's one way of doing it. Another thing we do is we work with robotic process automation. And this is kind of a robot where it gets a an account in the ecosystem, and it can log in and log out of different systems and move data. And we do this for two different reasons. One, of course, is to make things economically better, do it cheaper. Number two is to do it much faster, because this robot can work around the clock. So one of the processes it goes in working at 0400. And why it does that? Because the people at our contact center, they want the job to be done when they come to the office at 7 o'clock in the morning. Another thing, one of the reasons why we work with robotic process automation is, of course, that we have to better use the people who work for Södertälje. We have a lot of people with a great education, 4, 5, 6 years at the university. It's not plausible that we let them do very, very simple tasks at our work when we need them to do much more qualified work. So the use of robotic process automation also tries to get at the question of how do we become an attractive employer. And then, of course, we work with the Internet of Things, which we just launched maybe for a few months ago. And it's a big step forward. It's a big step forward in the part of this with the smart city. And it means that it's good for the environment. It means that instead of having to drive around and check if all our waste paper baskets are full or not, we can check it out online. So that by the introduction of this type of process, we get a new way of working straight away. And the best part of the whole thing is really when we get all these different processes working together, as I mentioned before, with the sensor at the lake who tells us the temperature. And that is really what we see ahead is going to be the big kickback. And now we have a lot of these processes on board, and now we're getting the kickback. So it's
Wow.
exciting.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. It should be so much fun now after doing
Mm.
all the. So you believe that this smart city is a long journey, starting with a small project and scaling it up. You cannot just be a smart city by one day.
Definitely not. And when you check out what is a smart city, as far as I know, there is no global definition of what a smart city is. But one way of defining it is a smart city is a city that uses technology to better help the citizens, and that's the big question. And Stockholm, as you probably know, Mustafa, I'm sure you know, they won a prize for one of the most smartest cities in the world. World Economic Forum, they point to Singapore. I don't think we really have to get into the question who's the best and who's not the best, because this is not a competition. I think we have to learn from each other. But when I look at Singapore, I've been there a few times, and it's a country that I'm really impressed with when they work with digitalization in many levels. They really have a holistic approach. They really have different models to try and use the knowledge of the citizens. It doesn't mean that they do everything right. Nobody does everything right. But it's important that you realize that we have to be better at using the ideas of our citizens and, of course, the people who work at our municipalities, because we know that we don't know. I think that's an important thing. We have to try and find new ways of using our citizens and the people at our work to get their ideas and to make something of it and scale it up. And that's why one of the reasons we had our hackathon in Södertälje, Mustafa, that you were actually a part of.
Yes, and I won it.
Deservedly well. Yes.
Thank you. So,
Yes.
hackathon is one way of engaging citizens
Yes.
to contribute with their
Yes.
knowledge to the municipality.
Yes.
Well, why you organize hackathon? Because many people say hackathon is just for fun. But what is
Yeah.
your approach of
Yeah.
having
I can tell you the story how we arrived at the hackathon. When I started for 2 years ago, we identified that we had to be that open data was one of the areas that we had to work on one of the fundamental parts, and that's by just looking at the world really. And as you probably know, Mustafa, Sweden, sorry, wrong language there. Sweden is at place 32 of 33 in OECD in relation to open data. So it's really an area that Sweden really has to step up on. And as a part of that, I got in contact with Hack for Sweden, who work with open data. We became a partner, and we were a partner at their hack, which was just for 1 year ago. And after that, the Hack for Sweden, after that hackathon, we decided in Södertälje, well, we should organize a hackathon. And it turned out that we organized 2 hackathons. And why we did the hackathon was because we know that we don't know. We know that we don't know enough what the citizens want and what their needs are. And we also know that we have to be much better in catching the ideas from our citizens and from the people who work for us as well. And that was the main thing behind the hackathon. So this was not just a PR thing. This was a serious way of working, of addressing the question, how can we get new ideas? How do we get new? And the whole principle of a hackathon, in short, as I see it anyway, is that you get people together who have different qualities and different education. And you work on a short period of time. We had a 24 hours hackathon. You can have it different. And we had 3 areas that we had to work on. And 3 areas were very serious for us. We wanted input. How shall we think about Södertälje 2030 in 10 years' time in relation to the environment, in relation to mobility, and in relation to retail? So these were really serious questions that we needed help with. And this is one way of doing it. When Sweden had the Hack for Crisis here recently, that you're also involved with, I was a mentor there as well. You could really see that this is one way forward. I usually say that new technology, old ways of doing it, no change. A hackathon is a concept to try and get new ideas forward. And it's connected to open data, but you can also have short hackathons. Ahead, we see that we hope to use this type of concept, but also in the organization.
Mm. Do you think it will work? Did you try it or not yet?
Not yet, but we will definitely try it. And we've already made plans for having a new hackathon next year.
Wow.
We know, back to what OECD says, that Sweden works very much in the silos. That means that we have to try and break those silos. And a hackathon would be one way of trying to break it, trying to get people together from different parts of the municipality, working together on specific areas. We have to help organizations to move forward. And you cannot not only just talk about these type of things, you have to actually try and do it.
Yeah.
That makes the difference.
Yeah. I believe it's the doing part is one of the important chapters
Yes.
of this story. It's not all
Yes.
about like organizing, having fun and so on, but also like taking the ideas and implementing. So I'm really
Yeah.
glad that you're gonna have a hackathon internally also to see how does it work. Yeah.
Yes, and when we started, our first idea was that we were going to start with an internal hackathon,
Mm.
but then things happened, and somebody said, "Well, why can't we do this?" So we changed it around, and that's also, I think, we have to take the chance when it comes, and the way forward is many. There's many roads to heaven, and I think hackathon is one of those roads.
Yeah, and also involving people in creating the smart city.
Yes.
I believe in Södertälje could be also done by Kim, via Kim, the chat. Do you receive any like messages with ideas, or it's just like questions from the citizen? What types of question you receive there?
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for those questions. At the moment, it Kim answers questions, so we don't use it as a pickup to get information and ideas from the municipality, from the citizen. But that's a good idea. Let us go with that. we get all different types of questions. Of course, it depends on the time of year. At school start, of course, there's lots of questions about education. When it's the holidays, then it's a lot about different activities and all that kind of stuff. We have been on the road for a year, but if you really want to understand better statistics, then I think we really have to look at Norway, who's been doing it for 2.5 years. And in Sweden, we're 10 municipalities who have came, but so far it's more or less Södertälje and a few more that are on the road. But in Norway, you can see that since they've been working much longer, that the type of questions that they get different type of questions. What they can see that some people, they would ask a different type of question from a chatbot than they would from a person. One of the things they realized in Norway was that quite a lot of teenagers who were depressed talk to their in Norway the chatbot is called Carry. Talk to Carry about that, and that is one of the things that the Norwegian municipalities highlighted and tried to address. And I think the important thing is that questions come on the table and then you address them. I think you have to realize when you put a new player in the game that things are different. So people would ask different type of questions because they know that it's not a person on the other side. But it's early days for Södertälje.
Mm-hmm. And also, do you receive a lot of feedback from people? Because I'm one of the people that trying sometimes to write municipalities in the chat box, and then I end up that no, I don't understand the robot, and the robot doesn't understand me. You know, this like in this
Yes.
relationship. So, and
Yeah.
then they send me to like a human that
Yes.
talk to me. So.
Yeah.
Do you think in the future we're gonna arrive to a point that we don't need to be moved, to be sent to a normal human, like we just keep talking to the robots?
I think in a quite near future that the quality of this type of artificial intelligence, natural language processing chatbot is going to increase. To compare what you can do today with 4 years ago is an enormous step. If we look a few years ahead, I think it's going to see a lot. What we're going to see probably quite soon is that the chatbot can write in different languages. That's not such a big step. I think another step which is down the road is that you will actually be able to talk to the chatbot also in different languages. That is going to be a big game changer, I think. A lot of people, especially the elderly, have a problem that they're not used to tech and all that kind of stuff. But if they can talk to the chatbot, that is going to make a big difference ahead.
Mm.
I think human interaction is always going to be important, but what we can do, what we can be better at, is using technology to do the simpler stuff and use people for the really more qualified questions. And I think that's we have to be careful how we cut that cake, as you say.
Mm. Mm.
So,
Interesting.
but one of the things that we're doing actually now quite soon is that our chatbot is going to be connected both ways to the tax office's chatbot, which is called Skatti. And in Swedish, it's called the virtual assistant network. And that means when you get chatbots to connect together. And that would mean that when a citizen asks maybe our chatbot, when am I going to get my money back from the taxes? Then our chatbot could answer, oh, you can talk to my friend chatbot Skatti, and then you will be
Ah,
connected directly. And this is going to happen, hopefully. The plan was before the summer, maybe the corona thing will, but this is not, this is just around the corner. And it's wonderful that Little Södertälje is a part of this. In Norway, they talk about that the building of a virtual assistant network is a very big national question, because a citizen like me, they often don't know, should I ask the municipality or should I ask the tax
yes.
office? And they shouldn't know. And that means that we who work in the public sector, but also in the private sector, we have to be better at building ecosystems that talk to each other, who can lead the citizen. And as you can imagine, if you can build that up to all the municipalities and to all the state organizations, then of course you're somewhere else. And you can really give it quicker. And that type of structure would have been a fantastic structure to have today in Sweden in these days of Corona.
Yeah, and I believe it's saving so much time of the citizens instead of running to different websites and getting
Exactly.
things complicated.
Yeah, and I think just what you say, this thing that people have to go look at that website, they look
Yeah.
at that site. That's because we who work in the public sector do not have focus on the citizen. We're focusing on, well, this is my municipality or this is my organization. The citizen don't really care about that. They need to get the information. I think those countries and those organizations that look at it that way, that look at developing that way, building ecosystems that work together, they are going to make a big, big difference.
Mm. But tell me, Tony, is it difficult that you merging together or the different municipalities in this ecosystem, or is it a hard work? Why?
Lots of people ask me that question. They ask me, one, is it a hard work, and two, is it expensive? The main challenge is not that it's hard work, and two, that it's not expensive either. The main challenge is when we started our conversation with staff, it's the mindset. What do we want the world to look like? How do we try and help our citizen? They're the main questions. And the answer to that type of question is that the citizen needs to get stuff that is connected to each other. So it's not difficult and it's not expensive, but you have to have that type of mindset. You have to break down, you have to think, okay, Södertälje is important because I work there, but Södertälje is a part of a national ecosystem, but it's also part of a global ecosystem. And that's in digitalization, that's the way I think we really have to look at it. Because Södertälje is a small, small municipality in a global context.
Yeah. Yesterday I was reading an article and there was a beautiful quote. It says, "A closed mind costs more than an open mind in the long run."
Yeah, I love it, and I think that's the main thing. I saw on LinkedIn, and there was somebody who was reflecting. Oh, it's wonderful how much change has happened in digitalization in Sweden in the last 2 weeks, and they were wondering why. And somebody else answered. I can't remember who says, "Yeah, well, it's the mindset. It's that now it's not that we couldn't do it before, but that instead of looking forward, we were looking backwards, looking inwards." So I think we have to be much better at realizing the potential that we have ahead of us. And I think that in many ways we look at things in silos, not only about digitalization. We have kind of environment, that's one compartment, digitalization is another compartment, and something else is another compartment. But the world isn't like that. We have to get this stuff together. Of course, if we can, by people, but let's say 20% of people at work can work from home, that means that there's less public transport, there's less cars going, that's good for the environment. We have to look at the whole picture, because if we don't look at the whole picture, we don't see how things affect each other.
Mm.
Because it's the whole ecosystem which is gives
Yeah.
value or not.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I want also an advice from this from your mindset that me as an urban planner, there are many urban planners now, and some of us working with data, planning based on data, statistic,
Mm.
and so on, and some of us is the old school that's not so much into the data. So, what is your advice to the urban planners to plan a sustainable cities? How should we use these data?
Mm. Well, I think the possibilities with the use of data is absolutely fantastic. And I think the borders are the borders in our mind, really. So we have to really, I think anyway, I know I'm repeating myself here, Mustafa, but I think we have to ask the question, what are the needs of the citizen, the people living in the city? What is a good city? How do people feel that this is a good city? How do we help the citizens? And to answer those type of questions, we have to find ways to better talk to and collaborate with our citizens. I can give a very simple example.
Of
I was
course.
throwing the garbage yesterday, and I went to the place where I was going to throw all away all the cardboard stuff, and it was absolutely full, and there was cardboard all over the place. And that's quite a common thing. That's not good for the environment. It doesn't look good, etc., etc. That's a very, very simple thing to solve with the Internet of Things. Very simple, and that's the same principle that we're doing in Södertälje with the garbage cans. So why aren't we using this kind of stuff? Why aren't, I mean, it's not that the Internet of Things is a new thing. It's not that the Internet of Things or the LoRa one which we use in Södertälje is really expensive, because it's not. Why is it that we don't make the change? What is it that we don't give the possibilities that are there, actually? And I think the best way forward is to look around, look at other countries, and see possibilities, and try and scale it up.
Yeah, yeah, wonderful. Tony, I would love that you gave us a lot of messages in this episode. It's so fantastic. I will
Okay.
listen to it as well one or many times again after this. I would love that you summarize your reflections and in three takeaway messages to all the people that listening or watching.
Great, Mustafa. Thank you. And the first one is, if not now, then when? I think that's, I wish we all asked us that question as an organization and as people. What are we waiting for? And the next question, which is connected to that, if not you, then who? A lot of people are saying they're waiting for the government to react, or they're waiting for their boss to react, or they're waiting for Mustafa to react. You have to react. You can make a difference. And then the third part is an inspiration. I got a present from my youngest daughter, Sarah. It was a cookbook, and it's from recipes from all over the world. And on the front page it says, "Food has no boundaries." And change has no boundaries. Digitalization has no boundaries. Collaboration has no boundaries. And Corona has really shown us that we are in a global world, and we do actually need each other. And we're affected by each other. They're
Yeah,
my three takeaways.
super interesting. Thank you so much, Tony. Before I leave you free,
Okay.
what is to last question? What is the next step for you?
Well, my next step is the same step I have, is to try and make a difference. But of course, I'm not at the same place today as I was last year, so that I make a difference, hopefully in a different way. And I must say, doing this kind of stuff, doing a pod, is one way of making a difference and saying what I think. And I don't really mind if people don't think as me, and they can please contact me if you do agree, or if you don't agree. That's fine. Uh, so make a difference. That's my next step as well.
Great. I wish you all the good luck with all your different projects and also with following the recipe and preparing the food from the book.
Thank you.
I need three hashtags to this episode.
Okay.
What do you have?
And the one is change, uh, and the second one is holistic, and the third one, no boundaries.
Cool, cool, really cool. Tony, again, thank you so much for giving your time, inspiration, and sharing your experience with us.
Okay, great talk to you, Mustafa. Take care now. Bye now.
Thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica podcast. I'm looking forward after this episode going to the Södertälje Municipality homepage and talking to the chatbot scheme and just to have this experience. So please, if you have time, do that and don't forget to follow on Instagram and subscribe the YouTube channel. And if you have any interesting stories that make our city smarter, please contact me. I am Mustafa Sharif. Have a good life.